Brian Detmer. I studied at Columbia College in Chicago. I grew up outside of Chicago and moved to Chicago when I was 18. And when I was in school, I basically focused on painting. I was always interested in language and image and sort of the dichotomy between the way language appears and the forms that it takes and what it actually represents. And I began ripping up newspapers and then phone books and then eventually books to apply the pages to the surface of the canvas. And of course, ripping up books made me feel really guilty about what I was doing and made me question, what do books mean? Why do we value them the way we do? And made me look at the actual book as a material to start to work with. Yeah, it really does. The title of the book is usually important. The actual design, the paper type, the image quality, and then the content of the book definitely plays the most important role. Well, not at all. Maybe afterwards, but no, I mean, this requires a lot of focus and a steady hand and a lot of patience. And you know, if I even have a sip of a drink or something, it'll be at the end of the day to relax, but there's a lot of caffeine involved. You know, I'm not too worried about it. Most of the people, I think, because I'm working with books, I'm working with material that everybody's familiar with. Everybody can sort of bring something different to it. I think that it's great that, you know, people around the world can access information, but at the same time, you know, we have to ask ourselves questions like, how are our grandchildren going to view our photographs? You know, we're taking more pictures than ever, but I have trouble finding image files from 4 years ago. But I can find photographs that were printed 40 years ago, you know, easily. They're not going to just suddenly disappear. But right now, it seems like it's profitable to companies to come up with new ways for people to access information. But the faster it's shifting, the more likely it is for us to lose it in the future.
Brian Detmer alters the way we see books, literally. He slices, whittles, tears into them, bending and molding forgotten pages into memorable works of art.
It's really like reading in a way. I don't know what's coming on the next page.
In his Atlanta studio, this 36-year-old artist keeps carving, looking for blocks of words and images to highlight. After a week or two, what's left is an original, three-dimensional interpretation.
You can kind of take that text and isolate it.
Detmer started out as a painter, but 10 years ago he moved to books, seeing hardcovers as his new blank canvas.
I like to suggest the idea that information is being lost. I think that right now in time we're at a really pivotal moment with our relationship to books.
He uses only vintage nonfiction, old encyclopedias, history books, medical texts, books otherwise headed for the dumpster. But he knows in his work some book lovers see only mutilated texts.
Nobody wants to throw this away, but you know, nobody really knows what to do with some of the more outdated books. The timelessness of the material is something that I like to kind of exploit in a way, I guess.
And they've become high-priced fixtures. The average piece sells for $4,000. On the upper end, $20,000. Detmer has held exhibits in Europe, Asia, Chicago, New York, and recently here at the Saltworks Gallery in Atlanta.
I like the idea of creating this sculpture that could be seen 360.
When you read a book, you typically start on page 1, at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Is there a beginning here? Do you care where people start?
Not at all.
Brian Holcomb is the curator at Saltworks. He says it's the sculpture's originality that attracts fans.
Every single time I see a new body of work, it feels completely fresh and dynamic.
Nothing predictable.
No.
I might find something 10 pages down that works.
It's that unpredictability Detmer enjoys, and a message he hopes resonates.
It's survival of the fittest, and we have, you know, books will always have their place, and I don't think that books will ever be dead.
An artist with a mission, sculpting a new chapter for a vanishing form of art. Mark Strassman, CBS News, Atlanta.
With the paper cuts, I start with a drawing on the paper, and everything's is flipped in reverse. What I'm doing in the drawing process, and what I think has sort of happened naturally, having done this for, doing it in stenciling, is everything has to remain connected. The piece of paper has to be one continuous piece, or there has to be a line that goes through the whole thing. I was in Argentina, and there's a huge stencil graffiti scene down there. And after I came back from Argentina, I wanted to do something with stenciling, and at the same time I found the slides from my grandfather. I started making stencils from those slides. Working from the photographs, I created these multiple layers of paper cuts and was printing them with spray paint. But recently, in October, I started focusing on one of the layers of the stencil making process, which contained all the finest lines, and I just started incorporating all the shadow and all the color and everything, all the detail into one layer, and using that layer as the piece of art instead of printing it at all. And this is from my own photograph on the subway. It's actually, I call this my self-portrait because I'm in the reflection up there in the window. You can see me taking the picture of these ladies. This was the first time where I was consciously looking at these people on the subway as a paper cut. So before I took the camera out and committed to whipping out this big F4 on the subway and like taking it up, I looked at it and I said, all right, I could see how that would work. I'd see how I would cut that. I'd see how that shadow would translate well into the paper cut. How would I do the reflective bench, the reflection in the window and that guy standing there. And so once I had sort of said, okay, I think this would work really well, then I took the picture. What might be a good segue into that is like, everything looks very similar, except the map. Like there's this map that, yeah. Recently got a commission. The client wanted to do something from an antique map, and he knew only that he wanted to do something involving an antique map. And he didn't realize until he saw my other work, he was introduced to my other work, that it would be interesting to do it out of cut paper. But I had no idea when I agreed how I was going to go about actually getting from an image of the antique map from 1651 to a paper cut of that map. And so it was a crazy learning process, ended up being the hardest project that I've ever done, almost in anything, I'd say. Not just artistically, but it took me longer than any art project has ever taken me. Where I live or where I work is a huge influence. Focusing on those industrial garages and businesses up and down Coney Island Avenue and Flatbush Avenue. In that neighborhood, it's the stuff you see, it's the stuff you walk by and you don't pay attention to. A garage door opening with a guy leaning in it, smoking a cigarette, and he was never meant to be a piece of artwork. That garage was never meant to be a piece of artwork. It's dirty and it's gritty, but when it's clean and in white paper, it all of a sudden has like a different air about it.
When and where is the show?
The show is on May 10th at the Christopher Henry Gallery on Elizabeth Street between Grand and Broome. And it's international. I mean, the list of artists is ridiculous.
And they're all paper cutters.
Everybody's paper cutters. They're all cutters. Some facet. I love this medium, really, more than anything I've ever done before, which makes me need to clean out the space because now all I need is paper.
Turn on me, I've been left to pouring out my heart. Sorry though you wrote, you drew up a man.